Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's selection comes at us from Choro Paru. Song request, Green Desert, 19 and a half minutes, from the album with the same name by Tangerine Dream. So that's what we're going to be checking out today. This is a big epic. The hot air balloon album art kind of makes me think we're in store for some prog rock, probably some classic prog rock or maybe some revival stuff. Let's dive into it. We got almost 20 minutes of music ahead of us, so why waste any time? This is Green Desert by Tangerine Dream. Okay, the placement of that's fun. Because for a second I thought that was in the room, not in the music. Alright. We're coming up on a fifth of the song being over. I'm starting to think this isn't an intro, that this experimental use of sound, creating atmosphere, is the project itself. tempo here is 65. I had guessed 56, so I was a little off on that. That atmospheric intro stuff, though, has led into this smooth melody, gentle rhythm in the back. Not sure what's going on over here, though. I don't know what it is about the guitar. It does have a deserty sound to it, doesn't it? It has to do with the edginess of the tone at the top end and a smoothness at the bottom. I don't think the rest of the song really says desert vibes to me, but that guitar does. I could hear that guitar in a desert rock band too. There's also, I think a little bit of it is the bluesy movement between ideas too. A nice legato, very staccato hits, but legato movements between some of the notes. Bup bup wada wow. Yeah. There's also an isolating feeling about this song. There's so much space available, and yet all we have is this guitar. We have the percussion and whatever's going on over here with the synth. Definitely psychedelic, though. Definitely isolating. Feels like a long journey. Just one foot in front of the other. Where does it take us? The fade in on that massive crescendo. Volume build up. We have more accents on the drums. Definitely more of an emotive song, though. One you just need to close your eyes and be within. I mean, we're halfway through the song and we've done some stuff, but we also really haven't done much. A lot of vibe, lots of atmosphere. So we don't have too much of the guitar soloing anymore. It seems like the drummer's taking that up now. The drums are fun, but they continue to hone back in on this single idea, which I suppose fits well with what the song's doing. The song as a whole isn't too interested on progressing, but it isn't afraid to do slight variations. Even that idea right there. But the drums continue to change. Sometimes it's on tom, sometimes it's a snare, sometimes on a cymbal. Small variations, but not really changing the idea up. The placement of the drums are fun. Well, for the most part. The drums are placed as if I were the audience. So the snare ends up on my right. I don't like that. I prefer the drums to be mixed in a way as if I'm the drummer. So I'm finding it a little disorienting to listen to. But otherwise, I do like the general placement of the distance of the instruments and how they feel relative to each other. Just having so much space between the tom hits over here and the snare hits over here is pretty cool. It's interesting to build a section so much on chords from synthesizers providing atmosphere and the drums taking lead, but not really in a melodic way, just in a linear way in a sense. There's still a lot of metric timekeeping though. Oh, that's a fun little rhythm change up. That's it's like the thin metal sheets they use to make like the sound of thunder or wind, right? In like stage productions. Oh no, it'd be thunder, right? I don't know what I'm talking about. Oh, that's loud. Very spacey. It's like a waviness to it all. Well, it's not a sforzando because it started small, but the volume drop into the crescendo. Very digital. You could probably get an orchestra to do something similar, but it's going to lack that purity. Dropping down to pretty much zero exactly, and coming back up from that. Why is this borderline melancholic? Psychedelic? It still feels very psychedelic, but the progression is sad. Maybe not sad. It's the bittersweetness of the end of a journey. It's accomplished, but now you need to find a new purpose. That kind of feeling. The joy and sorrow. No resolution. Yep, just hanging on those two notes. Okay. Well, that's a track. I don't really know, something like this lends itself well to analysis. I think after a few listens, I could probably develop a cool little narrative that goes along with it, but I mean, a lot of this is just emotional engagement. How does these series of sounds make you feel? Because honestly, the song doesn't, well, it does change, but like it doesn't change much. I had mentioned, we were 10 minutes into the song and like we had really only been in two different ideas, and they were kind of different through variance, not different because they were wildly varied approaches to writing music. This is a 19.5 minute journey where a single idea expands and evolves over time. We gradually, minutely shift from where we start to where we end. And it all makes sense retrospectively, but in the moment, it's such a glacial type of movement that it's tough to say we're going anywhere at all. And I find that to be quite. Oh, actually, I might have more to talk about here than I thought. I'm glad I'm making some revelations here. I do appreciate that from an artistic perspective, because I was talking about variation, right, and how at that one moment, I think it was like 13 or 14 minutes in, I was like, oh, here's the drum part. Bump, bump, ba da 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 dum, bump, ba da 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 dum, bump. And that's the rhythm. And it starts on the bass kick, and then we introduce a little bit of snare in there occasionally, and then the da 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 is just the snare. So we have bass, bass, snare, 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 bass. That is hard to do. But then eventually we start doing that faster movement on the toms too, and then the cymbals, and now it's changing every time. And now the two bass hits aren't just on the bass kick anymore. And so this begins to evolve. And then all of the movement here, we start to manipulate the rhythm. We keep the variety of instruments or parts of the drum kit in play, but we change up the rhythms a little bit. What if we only have one of the first two hits and then the four? And then what if the four is just the first three and then just the first two and then one and three, which we can now reduce down instead of eighth notes or 16, da 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 da. Yeah, those would be eighth notes. Now we just have quarter notes. And now that we just have quarter notes, now we can develop something else around that because we're just working with a lot of quarter notes now. And then, what if we reduce the instrumentation down to where we're just using the snare and bass again, and now we can build something off. And it's all these little changes. What if we add this? What if we remove that? And after you've added enough things and removed enough of another, you're in something different. But it doesn't really feel that distanced from where we were because we got to see that growth, but also because it took 5 minutes to get from where we were to where we are now. It's small changes over a long period of time with plenty of time to sit within any specific idea before it gets changed. And it makes the song feel like a long interconnected journey, which actually makes the ending kind of work well. We'll get there when we hit theme and narrative and stuff like that. What I pulled out of the song. But, take this idea that I was talking about with just the drums here and expand it to everything. Expand it to the synth work. Expand it to the guitar work. And just expand it to the song as a whole. What if we add this instrument? What if we remove this instrument? What if we allow this one to get expanded a little bit and then we leave it be while we expand this idea? And then we'll strip a little from this instrument and boost this one up. And just like we were, micro changing the drums, now we can micro change the layers and instrumentation of the song. And when you do this on both the macro level and all the micro levels with all the individual instruments, you get a song that feels like it is constantly in flux. It is just always changing, always moving, and yet, in the moment, everything feels like it stays the same. Always. The changes are so small that it's almost like the passing of time, right? When you think of seconds and minutes, you stare at a clock and you're like, this is so slow. You think about a year and you're like, 300 days. That's going to be forever. And then you blink and you're like, oh my God, where'd the year go? How are we in October already? That's what this song is. It is a sonic representation of the passage of time. In the moment, if you focus on it, it's just doing nothing for a very long time. Why? Why are we still in this section? Why does this feel like it's taken so long to do anything? But then you get to the end of the song and you're like, well, how did we get here? I don't remember the song changing in any way that would inform us getting to this moment. That doesn't make any sense. The song was so static. What happened? And it's it's just the different ways of viewing the song, different relationships to it, whether you're looking at it from a bird's eye view or you're in each moment. And I find that to be pretty cool. I do really I like that. From like an artistic perspective, that works so well. I don't know if that's what they were going for, but even if not necessarily the passage of time, this feels like a long interconnected journey. And I think that kind of fits too with the second section of the song. Once we brought in the guitar and a sense of rhythm and melody, I mentioned that the guitar tone itself and sort of the ideas it was playing felt like someone lonely moving through a desert. Maybe someone alone. Doesn't necessarily need to be lonely. Could just be by themselves. Going through a desert, and this guitar just solos for like 5 minutes. The solo itself never really feels like it goes anywhere. They just keep noodling around. The licks that they're playing don't lead into one another. They sort of create their own little loops. You play an idea, you resolve the idea, you wait a bar. You play a different idea, you resolve that. You wait a couple of bars. You play a different idea and resolve that. They're just these disconnected vignettes, oftentimes just regurgitating and revisiting the same exact ideas and general flow and emotional components. It feels like a loop that isn't a loop, kind of like how this song feels like it's stagnant but never stands still. This is just a song full of contradictions. Anyways, this whole section felt very deserty, and somehow we came out of this and made it through a drum focused section, which felt less deserty to me but still isolating. And this whole section can just feel like a big journey. It was definitely a large undertaking for me to get through. I try not to use this word too often because I find that it can be read as very derogatory, especially towards the art. But I did find myself growing bored in this song. There's not a lot going on, and what is going on just feels like sound to fill space more so than anything designed to craft a story. And I think that's true for the most part. A lot of this song to me is about building atmosphere rather than telling a melodic tale. So I think that's definitely by design, at least the part where it feels more focused on atmosphere than anything else. Not necessarily the part about being bored. That's definitely a subjective take there. I bring all this up though about a journey and the isolation that I feel in this because of the final part of the track. As I mentioned, it's bittersweet. There is a positive component to it, but it isn't joy. Not, I think, in the traditional sense. I mean, maybe they feel joy in this, but it's the idea of completing a tough task. It's the relief that you would feel knowing that this is behind you and the accomplishment that you would feel from completing it. Again, joy can be a component to that, but accomplishment is more of what I feel here. It's that, yeah, I did that. That's kind of what it feels like, but there's a bitterness to that as well. And as far as my interpretation of this, it's again, what do I do now? The job's complete, the task is behind us, and I feel accomplished. We did it, but that took up so much of my life. What do I do next? How do I fill that void? This was something I dedicated hours of every day for months, if not years, of my life, and it just became a part of the routine. Now what do I do? Now who am I? That's the bittersweetness. The joy of accomplishment and the confusion of what to do next. Of having something that was such a large part of you for such a large amount of time be taken away in a sense, and now you're left with this void. And so, like I said, the metaphor of the journey I think works really well because the ending fits with that so well. I don't know if that's what they're going for. I don't know what a green desert is. My brain immediately says jungle. A green desert would be one, a vast land filled with uh, flora. Yeah, that's plant life, right? I think so. And when I think of that, I think of trees and bushes and grass and all sorts of stuff, canopy above head, and I mean that I'm describing a jungle now, or a forest, or anything like that. But what I find interesting is I don't really get any of that vibe in here. Again, I get desert, especially with that bluesy guitar work at the beginning. Speaking of contradictions early, I'm just gonna tuck this in here. Good luck finding this in the timestamps because this is in the wrong spot entirely. Um, Yeah, dude, the guitar work at the beginning, lots of staccato hits, but also a real strong legato feeling at specific moments. That's an interesting choice because those staccatos were emphasized. They were just like blah blah blah, just really short hits. Interesting choice there. Now we've talked about three of the four sections here, but there's another part, isn't there? The intro. Usually the place that we start in conversation, but I've saved for the end because I was hoping maybe talking about this and what I did understand would help me get this more. And I don't know, I'm still kind of a bit lost on it. I'm going to be looking in the comments for anyone's particular take on this, what their perspective is or interpretation of the intro. It's just noise. A lot of what the synthesizer does across this whole track is just noise. It's just sounds, cool little textures to add to the song. A lot of it is either texture or harmony. We do have the synthesizer playing quite a bit of chords across this track, but rhythmic? No, never. The synthesizer seems to come in whenever it wants. It holds notes for however long it wants. Sometimes that is 2.5 bars. Why 2.5? I don't know. Why did you start your next one on beat 3 of that third bar? Why not wait until the fourth bar to come up or the fifth bar so we can start a new 4-bar phrase or something? The synth's rhythmic element just never made any sense to me. It is, as far as I can tell, purely ornamental. Whenever there feels like there's a good pocket to put some sound in, that is where the synth lands. But it's also definitely not melodic. There's so few, I could probably count them on one hand, moments where the synth played a series of pitches. At least not in any small enough gap of time for me to perceive it as a melody. There is, I suppose, a chance that if we took all of these really long notes and sped the song up to the moment when these really long notes would become quarter notes or eighth notes or something along those lines, that there might be some melody being played there. It's just so stretched out that it's difficult for me to perceive it due to this massive amount of time it takes. And actually, that is kind of neat too. I don't know if that's what they're doing. If it is, that's like stupid awesome. But it makes me want to make a project like that. What if I wrote a melody and then just stretched it out? So it took like 6 times as long to do the lick, the riff, and then just put a normally paced song under that. Like that's like bonkers level genius. It doesn't make any sense. It's going to leave most listeners confused, but like once you know the trick, you're like, actually that's kind of smart. I don't even know if the song would end up being any good. I mean, you'd have to the melody becomes the harmony though. That's just who would come up with something like that? I mean, I kind of came up with it with a bit of inspiration from Tangerine Dream here. If that's what's going on, though, like I said, 2 big thumbs up and a goofy smile because that is such, like I said, it's stupid awesome. It's kind of dumb on one level, but on the other, like, actually, it's kind of genius, though. And yeah, now I want to try that. I think I need to get software for that, though. I have pulse stretch, but I don't think that retains pitch. So I'd have to get a software that can manipulate time and keep the pitch the right, keep all the notes the right pitch. I'm gonna have to look into that. Might be a good project for one of these weekends when I have some time. Let's see what's going on with that. Anyways, yeah, but like otherwise, I just don't get the synthesizer in a lot of this. At least the drums and the guitar, I can feel rhythm and tempo and melody and kind of, it feels like a jam session at times, but it makes sense to me. It's very traditional in what they're doing. The synth is the experimental part. That's where just anything goes. And sometimes I think it clicks really well. I'm like, yeah, that was a smart place to do that. This random panning sound, yeah, that was pretty cool. I'm glad that was in there. But other times I'm just like, what is the synthesizer doing? Are they just noodling around and it just happened to be recorded on this track? It feels so separated from everything else that's going on. Um, but, the intro is just these sounds. No drums, no guitar, no rhythm, no melody, no harmony, just sounds. I don't know how to interpret that. It's in the idea of evolution, right? Where I've mentioned that every part is having things removed or added in order to set the foundation for the next idea, which will have ideas removed and replaced and added in order to set the foundation for the next idea. And it's this constant fluid evolution and growth. This kind of works from that perspective, starting from almost zero. I think we have nothing happening in the first 3 seconds of the song, and then the synth kind of comes in, gets a little bit more complex. We had some layers here, different sounds all over the place. And then eventually, some drums start to fade in. Really slow crescendo with the volume. At first, I didn't even know what I was hearing. And then I was like, oh, yeah, that's a drum kit. It took a while to get there. And then the guitar comes in. So, like, the idea of coming up from nothing and slowly evolving into that more traditional drum and guitar thing kind of makes sense from that perspective, but again, it's so far outside the realm of traditional music making that it ends up in that avant-garde, experimental, eclectic kind of descriptor of sounds being used not for musical purposes but for building atmosphere. And sometimes I just have a hard time clicking with that. So, those are my thoughts. Tangerine Dream, Green Desert. What did you think of this track? You have a different interpretation of things. Did you learn anything that you thought was pretty cool? I mean, this is just an interpretation myself of this, so I could be wrong in places too. But I like the way that I've understood this song, but that doesn't make it definitive. If you have a different view on it, please let me know. I love reading the ways that other people interpret music. It's always eye-opening, horizon expanding, very cool stuff. Otherwise, you just leave whatever message you want. You just be like, "Hey, thanks for checking out Tangerine Dream." No one reacts to them. Like that's a fine reaction too. I don't know if that's true. It doesn't seem like a band that would get a lot of reactions, but the internet surprises me sometimes. Anyways, comments. Throw them down there in the comments section. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though. 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.